Welcome, everyone. My name is Heather Blicker, and I am the director of the Community College Consortium for OER. As I started reaching out to possible panelists, I encountered a variety of perspectives and experiences. And as we all know, AI is a vast topic, but today we'll focus on its connection to OER. So we invite you to contribute to the conversation by sharing resources that have been helpful to you, your own experiences, and other things in the chat. And if you're able to stay for the Q&A portion of the session, we'd love to hear more from you. The Community College Consortium for OER, if I can, sorry about that, let me go backwards here. My computer is, all right, we will start over. My computer is acting up a little bit. Okay. The Community College Consortium for OER is a community of practice and a regional node of Open Education Global. Members are from institutions and organizations that represent millions of students across North America, and we promote awareness and adoption of open educational practices, resources, policies. We're pretty much trying to stay on top of everything. So we do this through webinars, which are archived and searchable on our website. We also maintain a community listserv that serves as well, it's actually a Google group that serves as a listserv, and it includes community colleges in North America, but also spans across all levels of institutions and the globe. And all of this is to make connections among the community, to keep everyone informed and share knowledge. And I hope you'll consider being a part of the community, whether you're at a community college or not. And this year, CCC OER started OE Week with a February event, and then we spread our events out throughout the month. We have a webinar archive, as I mentioned, and one of those webinars that we did in February was called Resilience in Open Education, Supporting Ukrainian Librarians During Wartime. So I encourage you to go check out that recording as well as the others that are highlighted here in orange. We don't always record our webinars, and it really depends on the topic and what kind of space we want to provide. And we are going to share a link to our webinar survey in the chat throughout the webinar in case you have to leave early, but please don't fill it out just yet. Your feedback really guides us in the webinars that we put together, so we appreciate when you do have the chance to fill it out. Now I'd like to hand it over to our moderator to introduce herself. Kathy?
Hello, I'm Kathy Essler. I'm the coordinator of Open OK State here at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I'm happy to have the opportunity just to kind of pull up a cup of coffee and sit next to these amazing scholars as they talk about what they're doing. And so the next step we'll do is invite each of them to introduce themselves, their institution, and share a little bit of their interest and why they're participating in the topic. And we'll start with Matthew.
All right. My name is Matthew Pierce, and I've been a community college librarian for 14 years. I'm the lead instruction librarian at Germannic Community College in Fredericksburg, Virginia, in the beautiful exurbs of Washington, D.C. I'm interested in the unique nature of the misinformation that large language models produce and what the implications are for academia, for OER, and for the broader society.
That is, you all are going to enjoy hearing him talk about that, the unique misinformation that can come through that. Next, Melissa, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, it's so good to see you here today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Melissa Mallon. I'm at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, Associate University Librarian for Teaching and Learning. And I am, as I said in a meeting earlier today, I'm definitely not an all-in AI person. I am very much about the critical nature in which we work with AI in our teaching in libraries and higher education, and then also how that impacts student learning. And so I think there's a lot to be discussed in terms of using AI in the world of OER, but really just in teaching and learning in general. And so I'm kind of coming at this from that sort of bigger picture viewpoint.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. And I love how you centered us in student success, what we always kind of need to remember to come back to, and it's good to articulate. Christina.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Christina Calhoun, and I am the Instructional Design and Online Learning Librarian for Oklahoma State University Libraries. And I've been an educator and instructional designer for a while now. About half of that has been at Oklahoma State University. And in my instructional design work there, I've been working on OER for library instructional solutions and just instructional design solutions for it, particularly with AI. My area of scholarship has been AI and academic research and writing. And in this work, I've kind of worked in different areas trying to affect that with the Oklahoma State Regents, with the Journal of New Librarianship, and in our own library. And so I'm excited to talk about that today and its impact on the scholarship that we all produce.
Thank you, Christina. And we'll close with Frances, who in case she doesn't include this on her bio, you're on the ACRL AI Literacy Task Force. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
My name is Frances Alvarado Albertorio, and I am the Graduate Initiatives and Engagement Librarian, and also the Business Librarian at Oklahoma State University. And my role consists of supporting graduate students. So basically, my AI and OER support, it's always in the light of how this can help student learning. And if it's not helping student learning, then we shouldn't use it. So I am my research interest is in the decision-making process that faculty, students, staff in general, why they decided to use one tool against another. In this case is AI. And I'm part of that task force for ACRL. And we are developing these competencies for AI, for library workers, academic library workers, but all library workers in general, not because we are pushing a pro-AI agenda, more because we are pushing a pro-learning agenda. We should know that it's out there and what is happening in the conversation. And I hope that this panel presentation will guide us what is happening in that intersection of AI and open educational resources.
Excellent. Well, we're so glad to have all 4 of you here, as well as the other 80 of you. Thank you for joining us. And feel free to keep track of the questions that you have. We will, I promise, have that 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So we'll dive right on in with the first question that we're going to toss to Christina and Frances. Is AI-generated content open content? And what policies and guidance do we have about this? And I'll drop that question in the chat as well, in case I talk too fast for all the folks. So Christina, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to start out by saying, firstly, I am not a lawyer. I do not play on TV. This is not legal advice. But, you just have to say those words. But always consult with your own legal counsel, before making any decisions that would impact this on a broad level. But my answer for this is that, well, it kind of depends. I think it helps if we first frame our conversation today with a shared understanding of where AI fits within open and OER. And that also involves, AI more broadly, within academic teaching and learning, within research and writing, within higher education as a whole, within scholarly publishing. It's kind of at this high level that we have to start with to frame this. There's not just one policy that the whole world can look at and say, oh, this is how we use AI tools, and this is how we know we can use it or not. But there are policies and guidance that have emerged that give us key parameters to understand and use AI tools and AI generated content within our OER work. The first one that I'm going to mention is that this consensus has come up that AI should never be recognized as an author or a co-author. There's this consensus that's among the US Copyright Office, amongst Creative Commons, prominent citation styles, scholarly organizations, and even international institutions that AI should never be treated as or referred to as or even cited as an author of anything. That's because AI isn't sentient. It's not human. It's not capable of taking responsibility for the work, either legally or ethically. It's an algorithm. That's what they recognize it as. And that expectation at the scholarly level is that you should only ever use AI as a tool within your own creativity and critical thinking, and never, ever, ever in place of it. So it should empower and enable your work and your workflow, not replace it. Secondly, if you use AI, you have to transparently disclose how you've used it, where you used it, and why you've used it. This is the second consensus that's come up. Doing so is going to provide a level of transparency, accountability, and integrity in your work. Many major citation styles provide some direction in the mechanics of how to do this, and generally wherever AI is used, we should provide a narrative explanation of its use, how you've used it, whatnot, an in-text citation, and again, it's a mechanism for disclosure, that in-text citation, as well as a bibliography or references section disclosure. I hesitate to call it citation, even though it's in a citation style, because it's not human and we're not attributing it to that. We are attributing it to the mechanism that produced this. And so, yeah, it isn't serving as that recognition of it as an author in the traditional sense. So always check, with your publication, your publisher, your institution, whoever it might be, about specific parameters to follow for that disclosure. Now, can you use AI generated material in your Creative Commons licensed OER? Is it open content? Well, the U.S. Copyright Office has provided some guidance on this, and consequently so also Creative Commons. And that to claim copyright over AI generated material, you must prove that human authorship, which has always been the case. And they have come out with several publications since affirming this need to identify yourself as the human author to prove that, or significant human authorship. They don't recognize machines as authors. So, they say that you can use AI tools to assist, but not stand in for creativity. That's the language that they use. Creating prompts does not qualify as human authorship. And you have to be able to prove that your work is yours and not that of the AI tool. Now, you can use AI to generate content for you, like images, example scenarios, help you organize your content. Well, sorry, not that last part, but generating images or example scenarios. And that would not be copyrightable, but that does not hinder you from copywriting the rest of your work. Now, if it is, you are using AI as that tool and you can prove that you were the significant human that did this, and it was just your tool to, manipulate or whatever role it played, you can absolutely copyright that and include it within that. I want to highlight Creative Commons mentions, giving exclusive rights for works produced by AI would impede copyright's core purposes and impoverish the commons without any recognizable benefit in the form of bolstered creativity. So again, if you're just using AI to just spit something out for you, that's not copyrightable. It should not be considered something that's part of the commons that's been produced. It should just be basically public domain. And so other countries have similarly interpreted their copyright to cover human authorship or proof of significant human authorship. There are different interpretations of what that means, but the baseline understanding is yes, human. And so, yeah, especially like the UK and Canada are along the same lines as well.
Oh, excellent. And I feel like, I don't know about y'all, I already have a long list of questions, and one of them is going to come back to public domain, but also remembering you're not a lawyer. Frances, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, let's start by, I'm the copyright and permissions editor of an open OER journal, the Journal of JTIL, Teaching and Learning. And so I'm not a lawyer, as she said. I was a law librarian, so I have some sort of law experience by default. One thing that it's very important is to distinguish something that I have seen in the conversation about AI drafted and human drafted. And it's very important that to claim copyright, it has to be human drafted. It has to be. I mean, if you use, as I tell my student, if you use AI, and make sure that when you're using, you're complying with the policies, with your instructor, with the grant that you're trying to apply. Are they, you have to read the fine print. Some of them might tell you, no, we don't accept anything that was nothing, not even 1 cent. nothing. It has to be your own. When you're trying to plan for it or use generative AI for some creativity or flow your juices or organize your information, and how you are feeding that system with your thoughts and process. So you have to, before you engage in any type of AI use, you need to actually think about what is the end product it's going to be. Is this for me, or I am going to apply for a grant, or I am going to present in a conference? Where is that is going to be ended? If this is for an open educational resource book, if this is for an open educational journal that I'm publishing, what is the policies of those journals? What are they asking for me?
Oh, yeah. So definitely know the expectations of the
Before
place to
even
which you hope to share.
engaging, before
Like,
even you engage to use the AI, you have to make a decision. If this what I'm going to be doing, the task that I'm doing, and that's what I tell my students and about when you're using AI, what I'm going to do, what is the end, what I have my gains and losses, because I can gain or I have a risk or I'm going to lose, and you
Yeah.
have to know that before even engaging. And as you think about higher education, adequately distinguish between citing to move to the next question and content and creating usage attributions, they haven't. There are the two of them. I think that they cannot like understand what is attribution versus content citing. It's kind of get into a complex idea that they try to put them, engulf them together. That's what the word that we say. And they're very different. I mean, if copyright is telling you law, it's telling you cannot cite something that is generated by a machine. Therefore, the only thing that you can do is attribution, some sort of your work. Like I use AI in this type or way. I use this type of AI only for drafting, only for outlining, or maybe the learning objectives that I created for that lesson plan that I'm publishing were assisted by AI. And that's the only thing. And if the journal that you're publishing or if the entity that you're submitting that work accept those, right? Because some of them might say, no, we don't want any AI, or we are okay. But as of now, that distinction hasn't been made. It's very individual, depending on the organization, depending on the journal, depending on the faculty, depending on the group that you're working with.
I love that you're reminding us to think about it at the very beginning.
Yes.
At the very, very beginning, which is exactly the same point in time when I think this is a time I'm going to build a Zotero library from the beginning. And I never do. But this, we need to think about it from the beginning because we're not sure what the policy will be for our eventual platform of publication. Christina, what were some of your thoughts on this?
I just absolutely agree with everything Francis said. And I think it always goes back to what is your use of it and understanding the role of AI in your need for it. If it is just to input, output, spit something out for you, that's not you using it creatively and for your own human direction. At the heart of AI use should always be the subject matter expert who is a human, who has the cognition, who is well-versed in their field, because they can use AI in a way that will recognize whose voices are being amplified through the AI tool, what information are they looking toward. So just always remembering that the human is at the heart of the AI and whatever is created with it. And if you aren't using it that way and that it is just, hey, input, output, give me a whole paragraph of this, that's not human creativity. That's your attribution, like Francis said, and it always goes back to what is your purpose for use? What is it? What are you using it for?
I love so much conversation about the human in the loop, and I feel like we're doing a good job of kind of creating some space between process, perhaps, and product. And these conversations about attribution and citation are fascinating. I want to dig more into that. Let's move forward to our next question. And I think, Matthew, we'll have you start with this one. Are there legitimate concerns about the implications of citing AI-generated content over scholarly sources in open educational resources?
All right, so yes, there are. So I would draw the same distinction that MLA style makes when discussing the use of generative AI tools. MLA says that you need to acknowledge functional use of generative AI tools when you, for example, edit or translate with it. And you also need to cite AI generated content when you paraphrase or quote it. So MLA has clear rules for both functional use of AI tools and for citing AI generated content as a source of information. But the mere fact that there are rules that permit you to ethically integrate a source type into your writing doesn't mean that you should be using that source type in your writing. Certainly, I would argue that AI generated content doesn't meet even the lowest bar for credibility for the purposes of academic writing. If an instructor was using and citing AI generated text in an open educational resource instead of using and citing a scholarly source, it would be a red flag for many reasons. I'll briefly address two of those reasons. First, it doesn't allow students to fully engage with the actual scholarly discussion on a topic, right? We want students to understand that specific human scholars have produced specific research studies, and the resulting ideas inform scholarly deliberation. Scholarly communication is a system with its own norms, and part of what we're doing, especially in the first year of college, is introducing students to that system. And we want students to know how the system works and to think about how their ideas fit into the broader scholarly discussion of a topic. So citations for AI-generated text do not permit students to engage in that fashion. Second, there's a larger transparency problem that still exists, despite the fact that citation styles are addressing how to cite AI-generated content. Generative AI tools, because of their reliance on, quote, patterns in their training data, routinely create the equivalent of a paraphrase of a published source, yet they often don't acknowledge that. And if you ask for the underlying source, you often will not get it, or you'll get a source that doesn't exist, or you'll get a source that does exist, but isn't the source that was paraphrased, right? So there are more issues than this, including the obvious issue about source credibility and the type of misinformation we consistently find in AI-generated text. But I'll save that for a different question. But just to circle back really briefly to the citation question, or citation versus usage, I mean, if you can't apply a Creative Commons license to it, then it's probably not open content, right? As a general rule. So that is a little bit more cut and dry than it seems. In many cases, it's pretty clear that that AI-generated content is not open content.
Yes, because we're basing that on the fact that no one owns it, right? That if it doesn't have an owner, it can't have copyright, and if it doesn't have copyright, it can't have Creative Commons license layered over it. Is that the understanding we're coming?
It's because this the way that it is, the work that generative AI work is probabilistic. It's so I mean, it just going to the way that it's a mathematical model, you know, and it's probabilistic. So it will take all the content and it will give you a randomized probabilistic stuff of depending on the prompt that you're doing. So there is no way, even the people that created these models, to know where the content is coming from. You know,
Okay.
to go
There we
back
go.
and do that citation chaining and say, oh, this part came from X, Y, and Z. So you cannot do that in a generative AI.
Yeah.
I
And my
mean,
mind's still tickling a little bit with the attribution citation difference. I would be Googling like crazy if I weren't moderating this. Melissa, what do you have to share with us about concerns about citing AI generated content rather than scholarly sources in OER?
So one of the things that came up when our group was having like a pre-chat, which let me tell you all that this group could talk for hours on these topics. And we had a couple of pre-chats to sort of get our thoughts in a row before we joined you all today. And something that Christina said has really been sticking in my head, which is what voices are missing from the conversation. And I think that this is something that we often look at when we are teaching students about citation chaining and thinking about the perspectives that are missing on a certain topic that may even be missing from the scholarly body of work on a particular topic area. And I think with AI, we are definitely facing some of those kind of I don't know, like ethical questions about what types of citations we are focusing on and whose voices are missing from that conversation. And I think, to Christina's point earlier, also, AI is not human, right? So it's not going to be able to help us think about those perspectives that that are not maybe necessarily being generated by the questions that you're asking. And so for me, I think a big piece of it is that, and I'll probably talk more about this in a future question, but the underlying why of using AI. And Matthew had a really good point about the student engagement with scholarly resources, the scholarly conversation. Why are we having students engage in that conversation, right? So like first we need to think about that as librarians and educators and be able to answer that question and then talk about why AI is not sufficient for that kind of engagement. And that is a hard question, I think, sometimes to answer is like, yes, maybe it is easier to use AI, but why? So
Yeah, and pushing him back into the scholarly conversation. I love that you've highlighted that. You're also who'd mentioned the value that comes with spending more time, right? Are you saving that for later?
yes.
Okay. I will not pretend I did not just give you a preview of what Melissa was thinking. Francis, how about you?
Okay, my mouse got lost in the process, but I'm back. I think like when we are talking about generative AI at this moment, we are talking about the Claude, Gemini, GPT-4, these ones that are being scraped by the web and by content that might not be copyright content, stolen content, Reddit, YouTube, depending on a variety. But there are other more scholarly power AI tools that people can be used for research, and my graduate students use like Cite or Elicit or Semantic Scholar or Research Rabbit that is powered by Semantic Scholar, that the data it's more niche and more curated and it's for scholarly sources. And that is completely different way of searching, because I mean you might be able to prompt or search more in a natural language format rather than the Boolean operators or keywords that we use. Or you can also search by keywords and Boolean operators because they have that interface built in too. Or something like 2D search. I don't know if you have used 2D search, which is look like a meta crawler, what we use normally in the day. And then you can there search in JSTOR and you can search in not only private content, open Alex, and other ones that are more for scholarly communication. So I will say that we have to distinguish a little bit between the generative AI like ChatGPT that provide you something that is probably not that great for scholarly and the ones that are getting the information in some of the open educational resources and journals and using Semantic Scholar, that they're probably giving you something that is more robust and providing you with DOIs and actual references. So that's what I wanted to clarify about this implications. And for the open educational resources, if you're going to be using something that ChatGPT or Claude or something, I don't think you should use it in an open educational resource book, because there is no way that you can go back and try to attribute it and find whose voice is here. And somebody mentioned the different types of voices. So if we want to be, we need to be very careful on how we put content out there that is quality content as well. So it's not that I'm dismissing the use of generative AI. Maybe for OER, it might be better to use something like Semantic Scholar or using something that Elicit, and point our students to those type of generative AI and teach them the information literacy and critical thinking skills and all the stuff that we need to them so they can engage in the conversation and actually have the experience to engage in generative AI. but
that's
it's
excellent. And then we're also teaching him some of those other important literacy skills
Mhm.
that kind of layer over. It reminds me what I'm hearing when I was a band director. We get those little fifth grader beginning band kids, and we used to say, do not buy your instrument from any place that sells socks, tires, or lettuce. Because we were trying so hard to quit getting instrument-shaped toys from Amazon or things that they picked up at Sam's. So I think I'm guilty of trying to get some of my scholarly information from platforms that also sell socks, tires, and lettuce. And you've given us some places to go where we can find those niche scholarly sources. Thank you for that. Christina, what do you have to share?
Yeah, I shared a link in there to the U.S. Copyright Office's. They've done a series of reports that they're releasing. This is from part 2, where they basically summarize, their guidance. They've decided they're not updating their laws and whatnot. But one of particular interest is copyright does not extend to purely AI-generated material or material where there is insufficient human control over the expressive elements. So like I mentioned before, if it is an input-output, give me this content. That is, do not do that and put it in your OER and say that it's, cited and whatnot as coming from the OER or the whatnot, just echoing that this should not be something that belongs in a scholarly material. If you're going to create an image with it, like you don't have the resources to create something, you want to input, output, please give me an image. Sure, cite or attribute it to the tool, but recognize that it won't be falling under your copyrighted material. That is now in the world for people to use and reuse, however, train AI, whatever it might be. But yeah, just those two differentiations there. I just wanted to mention that part, and also that the need for, I was just mentioned, like the understanding of how to use these tools, that AI literacy that was mentioned, that is central to OER authors, to us as practitioners and librarians. I think that our role here is as leaders in this and helping set those parameters for authors, for how it should be used, for helping them understand, here's how AI works. Here's how it's trained. Here's how you get what you input, output. Here's whose voices are being amplified and not. Here's how to responsibly use it, the consequences of using it, the harms it might be producing, and then evaluate that output. These are all key things that as practitioners to have in our toolkit, so that going forward, we're not asking ourselves, oh, should I take this chunk of content and put it in here? Is that okay? But more so, as Francis said earlier, understanding your use of it and why before you even begin, and that the impact of using that going forward. So yeah, I would encourage all of us to, really be leaders in setting those parameters and an understanding of AI literacy for other practitioners.
Thank you. So yeah, because industry considers it their IP, all sorts of fascinating approaches are emerging. And I'm so jealous of the rest of you for getting to read the chat and see what all's there. Heather, I hope you'll give me a copy of it. It's hard to be the one that has to pay attention the whole time. But we'll move on because I am paying attention to the next question. The David Wiley has suggested that AI could be the future of OER. What are your thoughts on this perspective? For instance, and I think Francis will toss this to you first, if AI plays a larger role in OER creation, do we still need subject matter experts? Why or why not?
We need subject matter experts to everything. I mean, you cannot remove the human for that, because that will be very sad if we remove the human for the conversation. I mean, at least for me, I will be very sad. Okay, having said that, the other problem with this is like if AI is creating the content, and that content it's open educational resource, and then AI again feeds that content again to the AI, at some point with any probabilistic model, it's just like playing the telephone game. I don't know if you remember that telephone game. I'm probably too old. Like you go and tell somebody something, and at the end of the day, what you get at the end, it's something completely different to the question that you have. Well, that happened with probabilistic models. like, so because then you will have machine data, data generated by the same AI completely. And that's when you remove the human in it. And that is not quality data, because the AIs are as good as the data you feed them, and they need the human. And I'm not saying this, is the people that run these AI companies. I'm making deals with publishers, and all of you can go and get that conversation. It's out there to get that good quality content. There was a piece in the New York Times published recently when they show how the numbers will fade eventually if the AI is still feeding from itself. So that's why we always need subject experts, and we always need human drafted materials. Even if we have these tools and these tools remain and help us, we don't know what is going to happen with the technology eventually in 25 years. But even if that's the case, they're only as good as the real data that we put into it.
Very good.
Okay, so.
Yes. All right. So the other question, and I think we'll toss this to Melissa first. What risks do we face? The other question, like there's only one more and then we have it solved. No, we've got several more. But what risks do we face, Melissa, if we rely too heavily on AI for generating educational content?
Yeah, so this has come up a lot already today, and I hope that it only ever comes up when we are talking about, or that it always comes up when we're talking about AI. And that's the loss of that human connection in the learning experience. I know this, Frances, is like, I love hearing her talk about this because she has a lot of really great things to say. But it's touching on all of the different pieces that we've been discussing today. And that is our connection with students, right? So we're creating OER for a reason. We are trying to, impact learning in some way or another. And again, like I'm going to go back to that question of the why. Why are we doing it? And it is to make information more accessible. It's to make learning more accessible. And that is us as human beings making an intentional decision to do that, and thinking about what that looks like. So I want to share in the chat here an article, or sort of they call it a manifesto, and I truly believe it's a manifesto that a large slew of instructional designers and educators collaborated on. And there's a lot of really excellent points made there, but I think the one that keeps coming out to me is that idea of the human engagement with learning. And I think we've all hit on this piece of student success, but that is literally why, I think why we're all doing this work is to connect with students and learners in whatever capacity they may be coming to us. And so I think that there is a real danger of, without being critical and intentional about how we're using AI, that we're going to miss those nuances that are so important to the learning process and to teaching, right? Because we know it's not a one size fits all solution. We have to kind of craft our efforts to the learner. And I feel almost sad in a way that the efficiency argument related to AI is winning out in so many different arenas, because it's really losing that nuanced approach.
Thank you. So you feel like the efficiency emphasis deprives us of the nuanced approach and the humanity that brings so much of us into education.
Good summation, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think Matthew was going to build on that, right? Or disagree? I can't remember which
yes.
one.
No, I love what she said, and I agree with it. So I'll start by saying that I think David Wiley's longstanding dismissiveness towards quality concerns really limited some of the reach of the early OER movement, and it really alienated some potential allies. So it's important to acknowledge David Wiley because he influenced a lot of early OER advocates, and they often repeated his claims, and they're still repeating some of his claims. But faculty care about quality, as they should, right? And the success of OpenStax, which has good quality control processes, speaks to that. And I'm not surprised to hear Wiley's dismissiveness regarding quality concerns with respect to AI-generated content. It's consistent with what I view as his disregard for principles of effective instructional design, right? And we've alluded to that. So I want to address large language models like ChatGPT in particular. After all, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now without them. The underlying principles of large language models ensure that many types of misinformation are baked into the output. And the misinformation large language models produce is often highly plausible, right? So that misinformation includes complete fabrications, logical fallacies, cognitive biases, subtle and sophisticated half-truths, and it is all generated very rapidly. So the combination of the speed with which large language models generate text and the highly plausible nature of that misinformation is really unique. No other source type presents a similar vetting dilemma. I think we have to keep this in mind when we have administrators saying, because in this era of for it or against it, some of you may have administrators saying, be pro AI no matter what. Do not treat this in a nuanced fashion. Or some of you may have administrators saying, be anti AI no matter what. We have got to be able to have a nuanced discussion here, and we've got to be brave in some cases. I know I've had to be, well, not to brag, but I've had to be really brave. I've had to actually really fight to create some of my LibGuides related to AI. So, but this is a unique vetting dilemma, and librarians are uniquely positioned as champions of information literacy to talk about it. And you know, if the administrators above us don't understand that, then they should, and we should teach them. I'm going a little bit off script here, but so I would just say that that time-consuming, very difficult nature of thoroughly vetting AI-generated text really undermines claims about how beneficial the speed of generative AI tools might be for teaching and learning. That's another really important point. And I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, well, we appreciate your bravery, and I agree. We need to be brave and curious and stay curious because so much of this is still emerging, and how exciting to get to keep learning alongside our students about it. Christina, what were your thoughts?
I just always go back to thinking of the ACRL framework frame of scholarship as a conversation, and that the expert is someone who, or the subject matter expert is someone who has spent years and years and years cultivating a deep understanding of the scholarly conversation around a topic, around an area of expertise. Whose voices are missing or prioritized? Where is their place in that conversation? The nuances of the conversation. These are all things that an AI can pretend to understand this or present that it understands this nuance, this understanding of the conversation if the user inputs the right prompts. But again, it is the expert who is the one that needs to determine the path forward, to determine, is this accurate? Is this what I'm doing to drive the AI to produce the accurate expert results? And so, you know, you can remix these models so that they're, you know, built by an expert and they have this area. But again, remembering, as we've said here, that these AI tools are all built by humans. The algorithms are programmed to turn and be trained by certain things, by certain data, you know, and I do think that there is some potentially great things that can come from these models being fine-tuned to different cultures and different areas of the world and specific use cases. But again, remembering that it is that expert that needs to be at the heart of it, because they're the ones that know that. And again, each expert's going to have their own bias. And so that's why those AI literacy, those skills are crucial to be able to use AI tools and to be able to come and sit down with a generative AI tool and say, I'm going to use this. I'm going to input all of my sources that I've come up with that I want to, you know, organize and go ahead and include in my OER that I'm creating. And here's how I'm going to use my generative AI tool, because I know what it's capable of. I know what to look out for. And, you know, you could use that to create some key points from it. You can use it to provide a summary or a scenario. But again, that expert should be at the center of it. Never just, hey, AI, give me this, because bad things will happen all around. And I loved Matthew's point of, you know, the instructional design best practices. As a, you know, fellow instructional designer, it is just so key to remember what good pedagogy is and what those principles are and how that plays into not only authoring your AI or your OER just as it is, but using AI in that process.
I follow up on that.
Go ahead, Matthew. Excellent.
So talked about different voices a lot today, but I want to be a little bit more specific. So with the sort of the way that large language models work, that sort of, the patterns in my training data, that if you prompt ChatGPT how it produces what it produces, it will often say that. What happens is that in many cases, it's like a popularity contest. So even if you had a large language model that was only where you fed the training data, where all the training data was scholarly sources, you would still probably be seeing the most popular orthodoxies in academia parroted back like most frequently. Like there would still be some level of ignoring legitimate dissenting viewpoints in academia. So some of these problems are really, they're just baked into the way large language models work, and we would expect to see them no matter how much fine-tuning happens in the near future.
It brings to mind a joke that my kids made in our group chat that does just have the two children and me. They're adults, but James is at work and he's like, "Oh, what's that word for people that are just saying things and using big words all the time?" And my daughter said faculty. And I was like, yeah, so there you go. But Melissa, I would love to hear more of your thoughts about the time and the meaningfulness of this human interaction, even as we're incorporating AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, it goes a lot to intention and the nuance of what that learning experience looks like. And so, like, I get it. If you're planning a lesson or you're creating a module or something, it can be so easy to just hop on AI and say, write this lesson plan for me, or, draft a workshop outline or whatever that looks like. And I think in a world where we're all very busy and it takes a lot of time to, do everything in a thoughtful way, that it's not, again, we're not saying this is like, no, don't do it. But to really be thinking about those learning outcomes for what you're wanting to, accomplish, really, again, like I'm always going to bring it back to the student. So like, what is the learner going to get out of this? And why are you wanting to save time on this particular task, right? Like, I feel like there's this bigger picture that we're kind of missing by focusing on AI as the tool to save time, but maybe, pulling back away from that and thinking about the purpose of our work and what we're trying to get out of it and what we're trying to, accomplish in the work that we're doing. And that takes more time, right? Like it does take more time. I get that, but I do think that we owe it to ourselves as educators, and we owe it to our learners to take that time.
That's beautiful. Like the webinar should be how to help our learners, and then AI is just the subset instead of the other way around. And Matthew, in one of our sessions, had mentioned, and correct me if I say it, you didn't want to offload your cognitive.
Oh yeah.
Outsource.
Didn't want to outsource my cognition to AI. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want to outsource his cognition to AI, and I used that this morning in class with my pre-service teachers as we were discussing the use of AI, which they are stunningly opposed to. I'm having to say, no, you will figure out, do something, with it, so we can check that off. Well, that puts us at time for the exposition portion, but we still have a nice. Oh wait, Heather wanted to give the survey info, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers, or just questions. Oh, and I called Heather
Kathy,
out without a warning. Are you still here?
It's okay. Kathy,
Okay.
you can go ahead and start the Q&A portion.
Okay, all right. So I think Heather's going to share a survey link with us if she hasn't already. And I don't know because I've been diligent about not being in the chat. But what are the questions that we have? And I don't know if people can unmute themselves or not. Because we were thinking if you want to unmute and just popcorn it out, that'd be great. But if we need to put it in the chat, you can too. And I'm opening up starting now. Go.
Yeah, everyone feel free to, raise your hand or unmute or put something in the chat. We'd love to hear questions or comments to continue this conversation.
Oh, Robin,
Yeah,
has a hand up.
I was wondering, so I was thinking back when we were talking about citations and all that, and I was thinking back to when there were human beings acting as the gateways in between phone calls. What do you call it? I'm so sorry. I'm blanking on the word.
Operators?
Yes, operators, human being operators. And I don't believe that way to sound like a complete moron in the middle of my question. But it's life.
Yeah.
But my question is, so I don't believe that, and this is just a guess, that they were giving credit if they ever, any kind of phone call like that had to be transcribed or cited. I'm wondering if there's some kind of in between that AI is filling between the algorithm and the creator and then the people who are using it.
That's really an interesting comparison because, yeah, you would cite the personal conversation you had with grandpa or whoever, but not that's just my grandpa's house has already had the operator and the party line. But you wouldn't get the operator's name in there. That's all right. What are our thoughts on that?
I could just jump in real quick and say that a lot of the citation styles that are coming out are basing it on, or not a lot, but some of them are basing it on the same way you would cite communication that can't be traced, basically, which is funny that you mentioned that because when AI initially came out, there was no way to share or reproduce that conversation in another way to prove that it happened other than just copy pasting it. A lot of the tools now have the ability to copy and paste into or to save the transcript so that you can share it. And that is a best practice that's being found in a lot of publications are wanting that. Citation styles are saying, yes, share the whole chat so we can see. I'm a member of the Journal of New Librarianship, and we have in our policy, as is Kathy, my co-editor, but we have in our policy that if you're going to use AI, with the parameters we provide or whatnot, that you also provide that transcript as a necessity. You can't provide one without the other. So yeah, that's funny that you should mention that. I forgot that aspect. So thank you.
I would just add that according to APA style, like when you cite ChatGPT, in the author field, you're actually listing OpenAI, and the author and the publisher are the same. So yeah,
that's interesting. All right, Angela.
Okay, so if we're wanting to have the citation in our bibliography, would it also be helpful? And I've seen this in some of the faculty courses that I've helped them create assignments for their students, where they go ahead and they print out or copy paste this into a Word document, a Google Doc, whatever, the conversation that the student had with the AI, so that then the faculty member can see how that conversation was, what parameters they were using, prompts they were using to engage the AI. Would that be kind of more of a supplement, or even go so far as to say, here's Appendix A, my conversation with the AI?
I love that, Angela. I feel like that gets to that sort of a little bit more of the critical approach to using AI. So it's being very transparent about, I used whichever tool for this kind of ideation process. Personally, as an instructor and a librarian, I would love to see where my students, like the back and forth between that. And I think by also including that, it's also getting them to think about, like, the questions they're asking and the information they're getting. And then I might, if I was writing a paper or something, I would probably address the why of having even, having that engaged conversation.
I'm nodding really loud as I write that down. Think about the questions they're asking and the information they're getting. Right there it is in a nutshell, right? What we're doing all day. Other comments on Angela's suggestion? Yes.
I'll add just a little bit more. I've also seen where we had the faculty member had the students read an article. They were then asked to go into a AI, ChatGPT was the one that they were using at the time, and they asked the AI. What is your opinion on this article? What are the things that I need to focus on in this article? How would you write an essay paper on this article? They copied that again into a working document, and then the student went back and criticized the responses that were coming back from the AI. They were then able to say, this link that said this reference, that's a bogus reference. Or this link was really talking about something that hasn't really been officially published, but it's in a working document. But here the AI is showing that it is a true factual hard source. So I've been happy to engage with our faculty here in trying to create creative assignments for their students around the use of AI so that they can then become critical thinkers of AI.
It's so neat. We get to discover this together. Comedian Josh Johnson mentioned in the chat if anyone needs another chuckle today. Matthew, what do you want to share? Raising his actual human being hand.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my virtual hand. So I do want to bring one issue up here, which is that I think citation styles are being somewhat naive about this, and that, okay, I can say that I'm quoting ChatGPT, and I can tell you whatever I want. You can't confirm that, right? There's no permanent link that lives forever that allows you to confirm what's in my discussion with ChatGPT. And I'm not required to do a screenshot of it, right? I actually think that the citation styles, even when they talk about appendices, they say something about like you can put like all of the text of your conversation in appendix, but they don't use the phrase screenshot. So we're all kind of taking each other's we're all kind of trusting that we're quoting things accurately, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the transparency aspect of citations. No one can go back and can confirm that I've quoted ChatGPT for real. So yeah. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I'm pulling us back to the scholarly conversation and what we're wanting them to get into. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. The partnership, relationship, we keep hearing this, I think, thread through all of it. We've got 3 more minutes. Who else?
I have a question. Did you already talk about, I couldn't join, I was 15 minutes in, the non-commercial copyright that Creative Commons has, because a lot of us are motivated with using OER to save students money, and how that can be impacted. And sorry if this was covered already.
Oh, it's, you know what, you talk about it and we still, understanding still emerges. So who wants to jump in on that?
I don't know if I want to highlight Frances because she's shared some really great stuff with me about that. So I didn't see her unmuting, but if you want to, Frances, go ahead.
So you mean that you are creating OER content, and you want to talk about the attributions of commercial OER?
What I mean is that I have already in the past created non-commercial use to keep it free for students, because at our campus we have some paid.
So you're asking about whether or not that material can be used to train AI and be incorporated into AI products. Is that?
Well, I want to maintain it. And so what I'm saying is I'm one of those people that is not using AI at the moment. And so I'm being cautious about it for the reason that I want to maintain the non-commercial copyright.
Okay. I just like, if it's published anywhere on the web, it's already scraped, unfortunately. It's already fit into the system. And that is one of the reasons why we are having this conversation of open educational resources and our nature of having information to be free, fight with the commercial, like Elsevier, all these vendors, for having all our knowledge in their, for a fee. And right now, that is the big picture. What we're going to do, we are going to go back to that copyright model that benefits the publishers, the big publishing companies, that at the end of the day, they're making deals with the AI companies and selling that, because then you don't own it. With OER, it's open, but you have some sort of ownership. within you with the publishing companies, you might have a derivative or something that is yours, but not necessarily the final product. It's going to depend on how you do it. So unfortunately, at this moment, everything that is OER probably has been fed. And I have papers that are OER, I think, that are already there, that I know that are already in train. If you go to that LibGen, I don't know if you know that LibGen pirate place that Meta is using to train their AI. So if you go to LibGen and search for your stuff, you're gonna see your papers there, your books, anything, regardless if it was published with a big publisher or it was an open educational resource. So
obviously we could sit and chat about this all afternoon, refill our coffees and keep talking, but we are at the o'clock, and
yeah.
Heather has the thank you sign out.
Yeah,
Heather, anything else you want to say?
I just wanted to thank the panelists and thank you, Kathy, for being our moderator. It's been a really great discussion today, and I hope everyone here has had a great time. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future in webinars and on our listserv. And we hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Bye all. Thanks for being human with us today.
Bye.